Thanks for your attention today. I'm Scott Apgar. So what are we going to talk about? I'm going to review for you, similar to what Andy just went through, but a little bit different slant on it, your options for OTT linear advertising. And towards the end of the presentation, we'll discuss how you can do linear OTT dynamic ad insertion using tools that you might already be familiar with or that your ad sale teams might already be familiar with. I've heard several times in tracks yesterday and today the difficulties in merging or transitioning rather from standard TV advertising over to an OTT-based advertising model and the sales models, how to handle that. If you were at a track I did this morning, you saw this picture. I'm going to go through it briefly because it kind of gives you an idea of the complexity of selling ads and how it works today and where we're going to make changes in order to do OTT advertising. And by the way, this slide deck's available on the website if you want to pull it down. So over here you have your advertisers, and it would flow left to right for them all the way down to the right-hand side where you see SeaChange's typical customers, the people that are publishing the ads or that have empty ad inventory, space for the advertisers to put their ads. We call this side the buy side because they're buying ad space, empty ad space, and over here the publisher or sell side because they have empty ad inventory that they're offering to the advertisers to fill up. So an advertiser this morning, I used the Ford Raptor example, may want to purchase 1 million impressions for their Ford Raptor. They've got a deadline to get rid of this year's model by the end of the month. They need to blitz advertising for the Raptor. They're going to talk to their ad agency who has relationships with ad server companies, and the ad agency may create the creative forum. It certainly will talk to the different ad servers to say, hey, I need 1 million eyeballs on this Raptor ad. How can I get them? And these ad servers right here, this is kind of the critical line. It transitions from buy over to sell. So SeaChange lives on the sell side. The advertisers, ad agencies are going to talk to ad tech software. You can call it a campaign manager. You can, Andy earlier called it an ad decision server, ADS. Here is where we'll put software in place that defines the rules to target and place your ads. And there are many different techniques to do this. In linear broadcast television today, this is a traffic and billing system. They're quite expensive. Imagine offers the most popular ones in the market, Novara and Eclipse. Here is where you'd get somebody sitting down at a terminal to define channel by channel what ads are going to be placed at what slots every day. And that's how Ford gets the 1 million eyeballs. It comes all the way through here. Somebody's sitting at a terminal doing this. That's one technique used in linear ads today. Those rules get pushed down to the ad server tech stack, and they get applied when ads become available. So at, what do we have? 2:15 on Wednesday, a marker comes into the ad stream, and down here we detect it and ask for an ad, play it out, and importantly, after it's played, we have to report back that it was played. After all, without that, you can't bill for it. And what good is advertising without money behind it? Speaking of money, here we go. Cpm cost per milli, the cost the advertiser will pay for getting 1,000 eyeballs onto a single ad. Somewhere around this number, $24 per 1,000. It varies depending on what your target rates are, what your negotiated rates are. And it gets split in these swim lanes according to negotiated agreements. This, you'll notice, if you're good at math, just a strict 33, 33, 33. But it might vary widely. Depends. And questions are welcome anytime here. I'm going to go through this quickly just because it's a short presentation, only 20 minutes, and I do want to leave time for questions. Whoops, wrong button. Up here you see the standard TV linear broadcast where the ESPN channel comes in from a satellite, goes into a splicer or mux box, and our ad tech software plays an ad which, as you see, the end result over here, overlays a national ad with a local ad. And that local ad's where my customer makes money. They get to sell that. And in an hour of TV, there's roughly 14 minutes of advertising. I know you don't believe that, you think it's more, but roughly, give or take, sometimes it varies. And these local ads are given on average 3 to 4 minutes of that 14. The rest are owned by the content providers right here. So let's say 4 minutes out of 14, you get to put local ads into the ESPN channel, charge for them. In the OTT space, Andy just talked about it a little bit. You saw a manifest manipulator, you saw transcoder packagers and CDN origins. So this national feed, I kind of messed up my diagram here, takes a big leap over to the transcoder packagers and gets turned into adjustable bitrate content. Maybe it's HLS format, maybe it's dash, and it's living right here on the CDN origin. These little dotted lines are intended to represent chunks of video, about, 3 seconds, 4 seconds of video. And in here, we have the markers for the national ads. So the transcoder packagers write those markers into the manifest file. And in this model, you've got people watching out here, and it's broadcast. As Andy used the term, it's a one to many, and this local ad is seen by many people at the same time. You can't really control it. It's highly dependent on the delivery network and the regional networking wires in the area. Down here, we see multiple clients, and I know client number one is my colleague, Rami Turkatan. He's watching right now. He's sitting in the back. I wanted to wake him up. He's watching right now on his iPad ESPN broadcast, and when this client makes a request to the back office to play it, we know it's Rami. It's no longer a guess as to who you're multicasting this out to. And I can count this impression. I know I sent this targeted local ad out and somebody watched it. So now I'm not using Nielsen ratings to charge for it. I'm counting it exactly. And when second client comes in and asks for it, they get a different targeted ad. Third client, ad nauseum, another targeted ad. Okay? So far, so good. So, linear broadcast approach, the top part of that picture. You're assuming segment groups. This is what you target by, but you can't control it. It's defined by the copper, fiber, whatever you have for your delivery network out to the home. That's the best you can do in linear broadcasts today. So they're sold according to these segment groups. You have a national linear feed, and then you might have two different segment groups. This happens to be the zip code for Acton, Mass, where I live, SeaChange headquarters. That might be one zone, and the second zone might be the neighboring towns. Or this morning I used the example, Boston, New York, Atlanta. All different zones getting the same national feed, but they're getting different local feeds because of the delivery network. That's all scheduled using a traffic and billing system, days ahead of time, manually on open inventory slots per channel per day, dropped on an ad system, and you wait to get verification files back. And how do you bill for it? I mentioned Nielsen ratings, so it's very trusting. Nielsen's been around for a long time. The industry is used to this. They may not prefer it, but they're used to it. So if Nielsen measures 10% of the subscribers in a region like Acton, and half of them are watching ESPN at 220, they can then take your total subscriber count and they give you a statistical measure that X subscribers watched your ad. And that's how we build today. Linear OTT, how can we be better about this? So here's your subscriber pool. And thanks to my marketing person for putting some color in the slides. Mine were very dry. I'm an engineering guy. It was all black and white and data flows. But you can see you take your entire subscriber database and now you divide it into segments. Maybe it's males 25 to 54, females, you can read them there, different residents of zip codes, or all your registered Democratic voters. We all know that politics is the biggest moneymaker for ads, so this is a useful way you can segment your voters and get them the right ads. Now, when you make these segment groups, you take your whole list and you divide it out into different segment groups that match the target criteria you want. And you can make those target criteria anything you desire. It can be geographic, demographic, obviously political. You can mix and match. It can be males 25 to 54 that make over $100,000. They might be your target for the Ford Raptor. Females 19 to 24 making less than $50,000, probably not a target for the Ford Raptor. It's just too expensive. So you can create these and you can adjust them whenever you want in our SeaChange solution, our approach to doing dynamic segmented ad insertion. And a question for you to consider why this approach might work is if you're doing advertising, how many target segments do you think you can manage reasonably? Pathologically, you have one for each person in your subscriber list. But trying to set up campaign rules for every individual in your subscriber list, you'd never finish, so you won't fulfill your campaign. Is it 2 segments? That's probably not enough. 4? I don't think that's enough either. So you get the picture. It's a manageable number. Maybe it's hundreds. Maybe even as you get good at it, it could be 1,000. I don't know. That seems like a lot to manage and bill for, but it's of that magnitude, hundreds of segment groups. I don't know how many do you think you can use? Anybody have a guess? Is anybody from an ad sale agency that has target groups in mind? Okay, good. So now you don't know if I'm lying or not. I like that. So I can say whatever I want. No, seriously here, ads in this model also are not scheduled days ahead of time. Whenever client 1, client 2, client 3 ask for that linear OTT, we immediately go out and make the decision right then. So we know how your campaign's doing. We know how you're tracking. And we can automatically adjust it if we need to get you the eyeballs on the ads that you were promised. And we're billing now by impression instead of by statistical measure. So the advertisers like that because they know exactly what they got. They're not paying for a statistical measure. And they know that it's targeted at the right audience. So instead of 1 million eyeballs on the Ford Raptor, you want 100,000 on this target group, and you know you got it. You're not using a shotgun approach. So that means you heard Andy say the CPM is higher for targeted ads. It is, because you know you're getting the right people. So you can charge more for those ads. So the approach that SeaChange is taking to this, because we have many linear broadcast customers today using our current gear, and many of them are transitioning to linear OTT, we allow you to define your segment groups, for your OTT subscriber base and use your existing linear traffic and billing system to schedule those. So you define a zone. I showed you Acton, Massachusetts. Now you define a new zone, a logical zone that is all males 24 to 55. That's your new zone. And it doesn't matter where they live. It doesn't matter what the delivery network is anymore. This is all point-to-point IP-based one-to-one. So now you can set up as many logical zones as you like. Actually, that's a lie. There is a limit in this system of 999 zones. That's why I asked on the prior slide, how many do you think you can reasonably manage? This will allow you up to 1,999 zones or different segments to try and target to. And you schedule the ads the same way you did before for the logical zones. And you present schedule files to this traffic and billing system that meet the demands for your, now it's 100,000 eyeballs on the targeted males 24 to 55 making 100,000 and up. That's where you would put your schedules. You can bill the same way if you want to, or you can use the impression counts. That's up to you and your ad sales team. You don't have to retrain the ad sales team, and I've heard this a couple of times today. It's very yesterday, pardon me. It's very difficult to understand the new linear OTT ad sales model. You can go out programmatically to all kinds of auction sites. Some are private, some are open, some are direct. You can go out to a direct ad decision system like Freewheel or Google Ad Manager or Cadent or others. There is a wide variety of ways that you can sell ads. And when you choose those different techniques, if we jump back to that first slide that showed the business model, it starts to get very busy with lots of legs feeding back to that ad agency where they're trying to collate the data that you need to prove to the advertiser that you met their campaign and you can get paid. So you don't have to do all that with this model. You continue to use the same techniques and tricks that you used before, the same billing functions. It's much easier. So that's kind of the crawl approach to bringing in linear OTT dynamic ad insertion. You do it roughly the same way, except you can target. You can now do segmented targeting. And as you get experience with this approach, using targeting, figuring out what the right segment groups are, how do you get the right number of eyeballs? Is it 25 to 55 or is it rather 40 to 65? What's the sweet spot? You can play with that. You learn about your targeting groups and how to segment them. Then you move towards a more fully targeted approach, which means more individual ads, splitting your subscribers up individually using different ad sale tools. That's it. I don't know how much time I have left. I went through it pretty quickly, but I think I'm close to on time.
You were absolutely on target. Absolutely perfect.
Any questions from the audience?
Oh, they got questions. They are going to give you stumpers.
Awesome.
They're going to show you they've been paying attention. Here we go.
Thank you. So on the earlier slides, on the OTT approach,
Yep.
It looks like you are only charging for the way you're replacing the local ad with a targeted ad, and the national ad just passes through. Is the idea that you won't charge for that one, or is there a different billing model around
That's
that?
correct, different billing models. So the national ads are typically sold ahead of time by the content providers, by ESPN already. So that's a different billing model. They're sold differently. And then after they're put in the content and delivered down to my customer who's bought the rights to show ESPN, they're given that 4 minutes of advertising in addition that they're allowed to sell. But you can't overlay the national ads that ESPN owned and sold.
Do you have to report back on how many people watched the national ad on their iPads, or is there an assumption made that?
They use a very similar Nielsen rating approach. So yes, you do need to know how many eyeballs saw that channel. Yeah. Other
Do we
questions?
have one more? We have one more? Okay. That can be the last one here. Alan?
Is it necessarily true that the more segments, the more potential latency that you inject into delivery of an ad or anything like that?
No, I don't believe the more segments, the more latency. It's really a very quick decision matrix into mapping my particular target code into a campaign decision. Whether there's 100 or 10 doesn't impact the latency of the decision. It makes your job harder when you're crafting the rules because you've now got to get them in the right priority order or with the right decision tree that makes it a solvable problem, but it doesn't impact generally the latency of the decision.
All right, round of applause for SeaChange. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Great job.